talked to where you really only talked about art? Like, I feel like when you talk about art, like, I feel like that's what makes a great artist. Sometimes, like, I feel like there's a lot of examples of people who are really great, like, famous athletes. Like, Michael Jordan, he, like, literally, like, eats, sleeps, and breathes and dies by a basketball.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where, like, literally he doesn't think about or do anything else.
Yeah.
He does, actually.
I was going to say, didn't he do...
He, like, golfs and shit, and he played baseball. But I'm saying, like, it's, like, kind of a trope that somebody who's, like, fucking sick at something will only think about that one thing.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's actually the opposite. Where, like, Ernest Hemingway was, like, super passionate about, like, war and journalism and bullfighting and, like, all this shit.
Yeah.
And, like, dating. Probably not. Anyway, fuck him. He's a weirdo. But fuck modernism. Just kidding. But, like, you know what I mean? So, like, I kind of feel like, I don't know, man. If I was an artist...
If you were an artist.
If I was an artist and I was listening to a podcast by artists...
Yeah.
And they literally only talked about art, I might get bored of it.
That's true.
I might get bored of it. I don't know, man. Like...
It depends on the vibe that I'm on.
Because I feel like can you imagine if, like, I guess what I'm saying, it's like if, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but, like, have you ever noticed there's, like, a pattern with a lot of musicians and songwriters where they might be a folk musician, but they don't really listen to folk? Or, you know, it's another thing is there are a lot of metal guitarists and, like, metal people that listen to classical music a lot and jazz.
I've noticed that, yeah.
Yeah. It's because metal guitar is classical guitar.
Interesting.
That's a different thing. That's a boring conversation, though. I fucking don't fuck that shit.
Okay.
But, like, I feel like it's, like, I don't know, man. Like, I feel like it's almost more interesting to see random subjects informed by art, discussed through the lens of art.
That is an interesting thing, because I feel like, at risk of sounding very pretentious, I do think that is something that I try to apply to my life. Like, even when we were talking about, like, magpie brain and, like, the way that I organize my room, or lack thereof, like, when I am downtown or driving around my neighborhood and I see trash on the side of the road, my first thought, well, not trash, I'm talking, like, I literally steal garbage.
Oh, like a pile of furniture and boxes?
Yeah, like, somebody's
totally.
curb stuff. I'm immediately like, what can I make with that? Like,
yeah.
what? Or even if it's not my own work, I feel like I have a lens that is very informed by the fact that I do this stuff, which is cool. I like seeking out other people that do that.
I wonder if there's a big pattern of artists in our age group or possibly time period.
Yeah.
Or I wonder if there's any, actually a more interesting question, I wonder if there's any examples of that type of behavior with, like, early 20th century artists or historical even, where I feel like today there's such a huge environmental movement and, like, climate change people and, like, what would you say, climate activists, or that's, like, a really, really important thing in, like, public conversation right now.
Yeah.
And because for me, I'm talking about waste, being afraid of wasting things all the time, being anxious about wasting things.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's, like, that's kind of something that's defined by, like, a 21st century artist where we're constantly looking at trash, waste, leftover materials, and thinking how we could use it, repurpose it. Because repurposing shit is, like, this, you know, cute Pinteresty thing, but it's also an environmental thing.
It is, yeah.
You know what I mean? So I wonder if that's kind of... I would be really interested to know if there's examples. I mean, I'm sure there's fucking artists that made shit out of trash from all periods of time. But,
well,
like,
for me, I think
has there been an upcycling movement that wasn't right now?
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Look into that.
I don't know.
Look into that.
One thing I know, for example, is a lot of medieval people, and this wasn't with art, but with armor and swords. I've read one time that there actually isn't a lot of examples of literal used battle gear from back then, because they would recycle it.
You were telling me about this.
Like when they updated armor types or methods of creating armor or weapons, they would melt down their metal.
Well, that makes sense, because they wouldn't have to get
reforge it.
Yeah, they wouldn't have to get more metal.
Yeah, and a lot of the only shit that's left over is things that were actually meant for display back then, even.
Interesting.
Because they did do that. They would display armor of kings and things like that the king never even fucking wore.
That isn't necessarily even functional.
Not even necessarily functional, yeah.
Interesting.
Actually.
I think for me, another thing, too, that plays into it is income. Because I think there's a lot of times where I'll break something or I'll find something that's broken, and I'm like, fuck, like, I couldn't buy that new. Like, maybe I could if I set money aside for it, but I'm not going to put my little bit of extra money for the week towards this broken drawer, you know? Like, I might as well steal this one and fix it up, because maybe someday I'll need it. And then I never need it, and I just have a broken drawer for 3 years until I eventually throw it away, and I'm really sad about it for a few days.
Yeah, I've done that many times. That's kind of a funny thing, too, a problem I've run into in the past when I've had a larger studio in the past, where I would have so much room, and there was, in studio buildings and warehouses, there's free stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
Because there's just piles of shit everywhere. So I would just take things, be like, yep, I need that.
Yeah.
One of my first studio setups, I had a china cabinet and a dresser.
Oh. Why?
Exactly. Why the fuck did I have that?
Is that why
I did not fucking need that shit at all.
Is this why you're anti-dresser now?
I hate dressers.
I know
that
you
is
do.
That is a thing. I publicly am against dressers and bureaus, unless, I don't know, man, maybe there's some like IKEA shit or newer things that are actually functional. But I grew up in my house, my siblings and me, everybody had big ass heavy wooden bureaus built in like 1910 where you could barely open the fucking drawers. They're like, you have to like rip the drawer out, and then if God forbid the drawer came out of the dresser, you pulled it all the way out, you're not getting it back in.
Oh yeah, I had that too.
You know what I mean? Why would I want that furniture? A giant hunk of wood and metal that you can barely open the drawers. It's impractical. You can't see what's in the drawers. If you fuck up, you can't put them back in.
I think you
Fuck
just
dressers.
had a bad dresser.
Dressers are bad.
There are dressers that are not like that.
Yeah, alright. Yeah, whatever.
Alright.
Moving on.
New topic.
Just kidding. No, I know that's probably true. But I guess I just had shit stuff.
Well, it's interesting because going back to what we were saying a second ago about the artistic lens on things that are not art related, something that you talked about on your old podcast that I thought was interesting was skateboarding through contemporary art lens.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good example.
I think it's interesting because skateboarding is, even though it's technically a sport, it relates to performance and performance art so much. Because with a song, right, so I've thought about this a lot before with music. Music literally doesn't exist. There is no art object with music in the way that there's an art object with sculpture or painting. So recorded sound has not existed for very long. Music has existed for fucking probably thousands of years longer than recordings have.
Yeah.
But before that, before recordings, the only evidence we had of music was sheet music. And even that isn't music. It's just a symbolic, like, code to represent how to play said music.
It's like the blueprint.
It's like a blueprint, right. Like a blueprint is not a house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's kind of interesting because by that, like, with that being said, music is art that only exists when it is being performed.
Yeah.
Much like a skateboard trick only exists when you witness it while somebody is doing it.
Interesting.
Because it is a skill set and competence development that can only be experienced if witnessed.
Yeah.
It's like if a tree falls. Do you know what I mean? And I just think that's interesting because that's how performance art is too. We're like privileged in the modern era where we can film performance art. We can make movies about it. We can make documentaries. We can record our music. But there was a large, literally probably 99% of music and performance existing did not have videos or music or audio.
Yeah.
You had to fucking be there.
Which is what adds value to it, I think.
It adds a lot of value to it. That's probably why music had such a fucking, and theater had such a massive role in history and culture of yesteryear, because it was probably so goddamn sought after. Now you can't walk out of your house without having a fucking mediocre music album thrown at your face. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there is no shortage of music.
Yeah.
But there used to be.
Interesting.
And I feel like that's kind of similar with skateboarding, where it's complicated because it's something that exists kind of like video games, actually, where it exists at the intersection of sport and art.
Yeah.
Which there are very few things that exist there, but they do. Dance. could be considered that.
Yeah.
Maybe fucking cheerleading could be considered that.
Yeah.
I don't know, like things that there is a very interesting like category of creation and creativity and performance that is athletic and artistic in their essence. That's and I don't really know how to think about that or how to reckon with that, like in the art world.
Yeah.
But it's a thing. I don't know.
Well, it's true too, because I think something else that's really interesting about skateboarding that I wasn't really aware of until kind of recently is how many different specific styles there are and how you can legitimately be good at one style and bad at another.
Dude, and you can tell there's like so many defining things about a skateboarding style where like you can tell, like you could potentially tell where someone grew up based on how they're skating.
Yeah. Or
whether or not they grew up in the city or the suburbs.
Yeah.
Based on how they're skating. Do you know what slappy skating is?
Slappy skating, no.
It's like when you do a slappy trick, it's when you're not ollieing and you're not popping your board and you're doing grinds on very, very short curves. And you can run up and just hop right on it and just fucking slide for a mile. Huh. Like people who are really good at slappy shit can just pop onto like a tiny little curve and grind it.
Interesting.
But nobody who grew up near a skate park does slappy shit. The only people who do slappy shit are people who did not grow up near a skate park.
Yeah.
Or grew up skating in the Stop and Shop parking lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because that's what you were skating.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or it's kind of common that West Coast people crush bowls.
Yeah.
Or really fucking good at bowl skating.
Yeah.
Or like there's the East Coast style. I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't really know why I was saying all this.
Well, I think that's really interesting in terms of like when you're comparing it to dance or cheerleading or something. I know they're like a lot of people probably be surprised to hear that comparison, I guess, but
definitely
it is really
true.
Similar.
Yeah, because dance is extremely creative. Cheerleading, I'm sure it is. I think cheerleading might fall into like a more choreographed thing where maybe it's a group activity derived from the creativity of a director, an individual. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know a lot about cheer.
What?
I don't know a lot about cheer.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that like a group of cheerleaders wouldn't design a cheer together. Maybe they do, but I'm pretty sure like a coach or maybe there is a captain of the cheer team that is kind of a creative influence on the group. Because if there's like competitive shit, like and really like they do that shit at a high level.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've watched any of that documentary, the cheer documentary on Netflix.
No. But
those people are like fucking hardcore.
Yeah.
Anyway, but like, because that's an interesting thing where there are that's another interesting question where there aren't that many sports that involve creativity. For example, kind of like in the sense that skateboarding has infinite pre-existing tricks, like kick flips. Like there are tricks that can be done by anybody, that by any part in the world, that it has the same name. You know what I mean? Where that's true with hockey. Like there's slap shots, there's wrist shots, there's like a saucer pass. Like there's like, you know what I mean? Everyone's using the same equipment and learning the same techniques.
Yeah. There
is a creative edge to it, but not that much. Where in dance, like, you could probably break ground and, like, dance in such a way that has never been done before, even though there are pre-existing dance moves, maybe. Yeah. Like, because there are pre-existing rhythms and ways of dancing and time signatures and...
Well, it's similar to painting, I think, in that sense, because...
Yeah, actually.
I think something that I heard a lot in school and just in the arts in general is there's nothing new under the sun. Like, you can't paint something that nobody's painted before, but you can. It's just combining different techniques or color palettes or light sources and to make something that is new.
Yeah, also as far and like to speak on whether or not something is brand new or never been done before, I feel like that's not true, because in the sense that it really depends how you're defining brand new or original.
Yeah.
Because have you heard of the website This Person Does Not Exist?
Yes. Yeah.
That is a really good example of the fact that there are original things.
So talk a little bit about what that is.
So This Person Does Not Exist is basically an AI engine where you refresh it and it shows you an AI created picture of a person.
Side note, great resource for portraits.
Yeah,
and character
if you want to just do some face fucking drawings of random and it's funny because it looks completely real. It looks like the photos look like a fucking like a throwaway from a roll of Kodak film at a family party. Like it'll just look like a random person,
a lot of
like or a child or like.
Every once in a while you get one that's like super fucked up though.
Yeah, like it'll be all glitched and fucking like weird. But
even AIs can't be perfect.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's like like I said, like an interesting example of originality and things not existing like before. You know what I mean? It just depends. Like, I mean, obviously there are probably millions of